listening to the Hult Center podcast. On today's episode, Rich Hobby speaks with Kassa Overall.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hult Center podcast. I'm Rich Hobby, Director of Marketing at the Hult, and thank you for joining us for today's interview with Kassa Overall, who is our next featured artist in our 10 for 10 series, a series focused on bringing stellar rising talent to our stages and accessible with all tickets costing just $10. The next show is on February 15th and features Kassa Overall, a jazz artist raised in Seattle, now based in New York City. Kassa, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Please tell us about yourself and how this project came to be.
Well, that's like a 3-hour long podcast answer, but if I had to distill it into 20 seconds, I grew up as a jazz drummer. Born in a musical household, and many stories later, I ended up as a jazz performance major at Oberlin College. And then a few moons later, I ended up trying to become a jazz drummer in New York, where I played with a ton of people, from Jerry Allen to Steve Coleman to Vijay Iyer to Francis and the Lights, Mayer Hawthorne, a ton of people. And the whole time I was also making beats and writing raps at the crib. And eventually I realized that the voice that was my own was a mixture of this virtuosity, jazz drumming approach with what I was discovered just growing up as, a hip hop head and all of that. And so eventually, I'd say about 4 years ago now, I found a way to kind of fuse it all together. And that's now what I consider, my musical offering, my artistic expression. So it's a mixture of, the vast virtuosity of studied academic music and as well as my own stories and poetry and beats and things like that. And so, yeah, that's a quick nutshell right there.
I really enjoy how your music fuses elements of jazz and hip-hop in a way that feels futuristic and ahead of its time. How do you navigate those influences into your creativity?
Well, it's funny. It's funny because I think my stuff sounds futuristic as well, and when I listen and I'm trying to break down any walls and just kind of make what feels like I should be making, you know what I mean? But when it comes to playing the drums and that whole thing, I'm really like an old school type of cat, you know what I mean? Like, I came into this thinking about the cymbal beat, and I saw Elvin Jones 9 times, and I studied with Billy Higgins for a few weeks, and I studied with Billy Hart, and so I'm really more like coming from the tradition, so to speak, and what I try to do is I try to take all those principles that I learned from the tradition and apply it to different settings, so I try to find different ways to apply the concepts of polyrhythm and the concepts of call and response and the concepts of sensitivity as a drummer. You know what I mean? I think that all translates over to the laptop and to beat machines and to when you start putting sounds together. So, there's this, it sounds kind of funny, but there's this term called Sankofa, right? Where you move forward but while always looking to the past, And I think that if you really want to make something futuristic, you gotta the farther back you can go in terms of what you're pulling from, maybe the further in the future you could push it as well. I guess it's kind of like a theory.
I like that. Well, we have to touch on the phenomenal album you released in 2020 entitled I Think I'm Good.
Welcome to planet Earth, where if you slip then you die. Vision full of scars, still they listen to I. Been through a little, still it feel like a lot. When I laid down to rest and it feel like a plot.
Please tell us about the album and what it took to create and get it out there.
Well, that album that's the second album utilizing this kind of concept that I was fortunate enough to kind of stumble on creatively, where I'm mixing I'm mixing these genres in ways that are, you know, maybe not so researched already, you know. And so I put out Go Get Ice Cream and Listen to Jazz in 2019, and then I put out I Think I'm Good in 2020. And I Think I'm Good is more like I've established the concept, like the production idea and kind of the genre mixing concept already, but then I Think I'm Good, I really started to dive deep into my own personal stories and things like that. So, you know, I dealt with depression and mental illness and things throughout my life, and that album was actually almost like a love story to that whole experience. You know what I mean? And I started making songs that were kind of bringing to light some of the things I might not know how to really just deal with in my day-to-day life, and using music and the pen and the pad as a way to kind of like process some of these things. And so in a sense, it's a therapy album. And it's funny that it came out, I don't know if it's funny, but it came out right before the pandemic hit. And it really felt like almost a soundtrack to the pandemic, you know. In the process of making the album, I almost felt like it was a little too much of an isolated, alone sounding album, you know. And then the album comes out and the whole world has to kind of deal with the same questions, you know. So that's a little bit about that album.
Is there a song on the album that has connected with people more than others? What was the song, and what about it was connecting with people?
It's the song would be Darkness in Mind.
From what they say and the truth, need not cry another day, but only fight and run away. But the darkness of my mind and the love thereof.
And that song features Sullivan Fortner on piano. He's my favorite living pianist. He's an extreme virtuoso, and I've worked with him since college. And that song actually takes the whole song is built around a Chopin piece, Prelude number 4 in E minor, I believe. But basically, that song kind of encapsulates what I was talking about. The whole thing is of dealing with your inner shadow and stuff. And that song, we performed that song for a few years before it came out on the album. And after every show, someone would always come up to me and say, "Hey man, what was that song? I need to hear that. Like, I need to listen to that song for the rest of my life." Like, and I say, "It's not out yet. You know, I gotta properly prepare putting that song out." And I would also say that the album, I Think I'm Good, not too many people know this, but it's almost like a bed for that song. Like, I had that song and I needed to make an album that could, hold that song. That's how important that song is for me.
That's amazing. Now, you released the album in the start of 2020, and there were a number of big cultural shifts that happened that year. Your album seemed to touch on a number of big topics, like especially with the song Show Me a Prison. What was it like seeing these huge issues become front and center that year?
Well, I think that the art is the ignition. I think that art stimulates something. If we're lucky enough, we get an inspiration and we make something that kind of nods at what's coming. you know. And so I think that when I made those songs, even the album before, I had a song called Prison and Pharmaceuticals, right? And that I made that song right when Trump got in office. And basically the song was inspired by a very small news clip, which was that the stocks that skyrocketed as he came into office were prison stocks, right? They're literally stocks that you can buy that are, you know, stocks and shares of private prisons, right? And then pharmaceutical companies. And me being somebody that took medication in the past, spent, you know, 10 days in a mental hospital twice, and took years trying to get off of medication that didn't feel right. I understand that the pharmaceutical industry as an industry and the prison industry as an industry of commerce, and to see that like the stock market is excited about these stocks because of this changing of the guard, it kind of made me think. It made me think about all of us, not just you know, whatever made those stocks go up, but it makes me think about our whole collective part in this machine, you know.
Show up on stage like what's the commotion? Where my ancestors in the Indian Ocean. Light skin, but I still need me some lotion. Read a lot of books like Who You Provoking? Uncle Sam pimping right down to the cuticles. What's the best stocks? Prison and pharmaceuticals. Hey, they want him back on the Prozac. He would've got away, but they tracking the low jack. College educated, but he acts so black. And we gon' keep screaming till they take that coke back.
Hey, they want him back on the Prozac. Back on the Prozac. Back on the...
Another topic I wanted to touch on was awareness of mental health issues and how that has also come front and center recently. What's it been like seeing that topic discussed more openly?
Well, I think that just from talking to people around me and talking to even people I don't know so well, but it's just a norm, you know. If you don't have something really serious that you're dealing with as far as like how do I relate in today's world, if you don't have that going on, I would say that's weird. You know what I mean? Like, and I actually like because I'm already kind of outspoken about it. I'm like, man, I've been feeling weird about this for years, you know? So when I talk to people and they're like, and I kind of lay it out there open, I think it makes everybody feel a little more relaxed. Like, oh, okay, you know, if I can explain to you what it feels like to have a manic episode, and you can explain to me what it feels like on a Monday, and you realize that this is all, you know, just different extremes of something that's a natural part of the human condition, you know. And I don't know, I don't have the answer, but I do know that for me, I think connecting back to nature is huge, you know, because we're so technological now, and we're so excited about, you know, we're excited about the metaverse and all this stuff, and it's kind of just this big idea of like technological evolution and stuff. But at the end of the day, we're not, as a whole, we're not as connected to nature as we once were, and I think that's a huge key, you know. And the Northwest knows about that.
I was about to say your Seattle side is showing.
Yeah, man, I'm about to double down, man. Pretty soon I'm gonna be living on the beach like we were talking about.
And awesome. Now I have to ask, what is the live experience of seeing Kassa Overall in person? What can people expect?
Well, I think you can expect a whole nother experience from the album, different from the album. You know, a lot of artists will show up and they'll just play the album, and you know, if they're a huge artist, you know, maybe all the crowd knows the songs and they hear the songs performed, and it is what it is. But like I said, I came up playing in the jazz world. You know, I came up improvising And so everything we're doing, we're taking some of the material that I did in the record, but we're deconstructing everything and figuring out ways to improvise within those, you know, within those architectural forms. And the other side of that is my musical process for making music is also improvisational. So part of the reason we improvise is that that's part of the texture of the feeling of the music. Now the band, I'm gonna have 4 virtuosos up there with me, so I'm gonna be on drums and vocals, a little electronics. Tomoki Sanders is playing saxophone and, you know, DJ electronics. Ian Fink is playing. Tomoki Sanders is from Japan and the offspring of Pharoah Sanders, by the way, and Ian Fink is from Detroit, studied with Jerry Allen. He's on keys. And then Benji Alance is on percussion. And he's a Haitian American percussionist. And so, yeah, man, we're just gonna give an experience, you know, like we do some of the album stuff, but then we also like to journey and adventure in every performance, and nothing's the same.
One question I like to ask every artist is an old and a new. Could you tell us about an older album that had a big impact on you as an artist, and then also tell us about a recent release that it also has had a big impact on you?
Okay, so the young musician one is easy. I'm gonna go with Crescent by the John Coltrane Quartet, particularly track 2, Wise One. Which, for if there's any actual like super jazz heads listening, I've been doing research, and it turns out that song was also written for Naima, his first wife. As far as new music, man, I'm always so hesitant. In the past year, I'm going to say you got to listen to Shades of Flu 2 by Kassa Overall on Bandcamp. I'm not going to front, man. Shades of Flu 2 slaps, and cats are really like need to step it up. So until then, I'm going to have to say you got to listen to my own stuff.
Hey, man, you got to be your own promoter sometimes.
Hey, man, bandcamp.com, Kassa Overall.
We're really excited to have you here on February 15th. Kassa, where can people go to find your music?
You can type Kassa Overall, KASSAOVERALL. You can type it into Google and find your way. You know, whatever streaming platform you listen to, I'm on there. I will say I have 2 mixtapes that are only on Bandcamp, and those are also my newest things, but they're kind of more for the heads. And then if you go to YouTube, I also have quite a few music videos I've done in the past few years that are only on YouTube. So besides that, you know, Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere. We got vinyl in lots of stores. I got merch and vinyl on my Instagram. And so, you know, it's everywhere. Nowadays, just type it into a search engine and I'll come up.
And I know we've talked a lot about Seattle, but as a local, I have to know, what was it like to do an in-studio performance at KEXP?
Man, that was amazing. Like, if you can, like, that opens up a whole nother can of worms. But if you can imagine, February 17th, I'm at Blue Note Tokyo. And then I come back, open for Bilal in New York. Then I go to the West Coast and I do a quick West Coast run. Merch is selling out every night. This is February 2020. I'm really feeling like, okay, this is about to really pop off. Like, I'm about to really do this. March 1st, in studio, KEXP. It felt like a dream. You know, I'm running on low sleep. The band is sounding great. We did our thing. And then, like, 2 weeks later, lockdowns, you know what I mean? So I would say, like, it was the highest high. And it was also like there was this worry about this looming pandemic, and then everything shut down. So I think that moment will always, you know, live in my heart, you know, to just not take it for granted and to realize that, like, things change like that, you know. But that was definitely a high moment, man.
And last question, I promise. I have to ask, what was your experience like for that first show back in front of a live audience?
The word that comes to mind is cathartic, you know. And not only for me, but for the crowd as well. I could tell it was like, it's like, you know how food tastes when you're super hungry? Like, that's the best slice of pizza I ever had. That was the best bowl of Raisin Bran I've ever had, you know?
Right.
And it was like that, man. It was like nothing but gratitude and catharsis, and like realizing like sometimes you don't know what you're missing until you get it, and you're like, oh, that's right. That's why I do all of this.
Kassa, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and we cannot wait to see you live on stage at the Hult Center on February 15th for our 10 for 10 series. Safe travels to you, and can't wait to see you soon.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. It's great talking to you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hult Center podcast. For information about this show and other upcoming events, check out hultcenter.org.
Lately, you can't do halfway with this chance of rain. Seems that you'd rather